I just want to start by saying this is not a hit piece on Doc Martens. I had my 1460s for over 10 years, I wore them all the time and I never had any problems with them. But there were always two things that I regretted about my purchase, and they were completely my fault, by the way. One is that I got them in the greasy black colour, which meant that they were completely matte and had no shine to them. I always liked the shiny boot look, so I was a bit gutted about that. Two, they were always a little bit shorter than I would have liked. The reason I got them in the first place was because I wanted that military combat boot look, but it wasn't until sometime afterwards that I realised that actually higher boots give off this look a lot better. So with these two things in mind, I sold my Doc Martens, and in today's video I'm going to show you what I got instead. So any of you who are keen-eyed might have already realised I got myself a pair of Solivairs. However, they're probably not the ones you think they are, and I'll go into detail in a bit. Just briefly though, for those not in the know, you'll notice that these actually have a very Doc Martens look to them. And that's because Solovair used to make the original Doc Marten 1460 in the 1960s. And you'll see old pairs labelled as Doc Martens made by Solovair. There's a pretty complex history as to how this all happened, and it's been explained very well multiple times by other YouTube channels, so go and seek that out if you're interested. But the bottom line is, many people consider Solovair to be the true Doc Martens, since they still make all their shoes in the original factory in Wollaston, Northamptonshire. And it's been proven by people like Rose Anvil that the Solivairs are highly superior in quality and build compared to the Doc Martens, despite the price points being quite similar. Solivairs have better leather, shank and Goodyear welting, just to name a few things. Now then, onto the actual boots I bought. You might have thought that I'd go for the Solovair 8-eye Derby, which is their equivalent to the Doc Martens 1460 that I just sold. But like I said, it was always a little bit shorter than I would have liked. And even though Solovair do an 11-eye Derby boot, I ended up going for the 11-eye Astronaut boot. They have a lot in common, but the Astronaut had a few key details which made me like it a lot more than the Derby. First of all, it has a much flatter toe box, which I think looks so much better than the bulbous one on the Derby boots. The toe box is also slightly slimmer, which makes it look more refined, but the overall boot is still chunky thanks to that sole. There's also some differences in the design of the panelling, but other than that, the boots look quite similar, and you'd be forgiven for thinking they're the same at first glance. I just think the overall shape of the Astronaut boot is so much nicer than the Derby, and I fell in love with it straight away. Some of the obvious visual differences which apply to any model of Solovair versus Doc Marten are the colour of the stitching around the sole. Doc Martens have actually trademarked the yellow stitching around the sole, so that's why you don't see it on other boots of this kind. So the Solivairs have this grey stitching instead, which a lot of people will probably prefer as it's a bit more low-key. I also think the sole itself is a bit darker, more of a smoky grey, versus the Docs, which have a bit of a beige yellowy thing going on. Oh, and one more thing, I did actually switch out the laces from the originals. I found that the originals were quite thick and not very long, so I bought some 3mm wax laces, which I think look a lot better, and I love that I can wrap them around the top of the boot. The colour I have here was also chosen based on one of my regrets with my old Doc Martens, which were that greasy matte black. So with the Solivairs, I went for this high shine leather. I was a little nervous at first because I half expected them to turn up looking like that wet patent leather, but thankfully that wasn't the case. These have a perfect amount of smooth and shininess to them, which makes them look a lot more military-esque in my opinion. Now I know a lot of people don't rate high shine leather because it's a corrected leather with a coating on top of it. So it definitely isn't going to be as hard wearing as greasy or full grain leather. And it also won't get that nice aging, distressed look either. But I read and watched a lot of opinions and reviews of the Solovair high shine, and the general consensus seems to be they can last a very long time as long as you care for them properly. You can definitely wear them as a daily boot, but probably don't go hiking in them or use them as work boots. At the end of the day, they're still fashion boots, and that's all they've ever claimed to be. So I'm going to look after mine. However, if I do see any peeling or cracking after an unreasonably short amount of time, I will call them out. The quality and feel of the Solivairs is pretty noticeable just from holding them in hand. The leather is thicker and sturdier than the Doc Martens. It also has a more luxury feel on the inside. Again, if you want a full detailed breakdown, then go and watch Rose Anvil's video on it. For sizing, you're almost certainly going to want to go half a size down in any Solovair that you buy. Even though the astronaut boots have a slimmer last, they still run quite long. Thankfully, Solovair have an excellent sizing guide on their website, which says exactly how long each size is. I'm usually between an 8.5 and a 9, but I actually went down to an 8 in these. They fit like a glove with regular socks, and hopefully they'll loosen up just a tad and then the sizing will be perfect. So I've spent this whole video raving about Solovairs, but surely that means they're really expensive, right? Well, not really. If we compare the Doc Marten 1460 and the Solovair 8i Derby, which are essentially the same boot, the Doc Marten 1460 is £169 and the Solovair 8i Derby is £179. That's £10 more expensive, but keep in mind the Solovair 8i is still made in England, in the original factory, with higher quality materials and the ability to resole. If we look at the made in England Doc Marten 1460, it's £219 versus the Solovair 8i Derby's £179. So to get the equivalent heritage and quality Doc Marten as the Solovair, it's actually £40 more expensive. And if you watch Rose Anvil's video where he compared the made in England Doc Marten versus the Solovair, then the Solovair still comes out on top by far. But again, this is no shade from me, I really liked my Doc Martens. However, it is interesting to hear an expert's opinion when they compare them side by side. But on top of all this, Solovair actually have an outlet store where they sell factory seconds for like 60% off, and that's where I got my boots from. They have a tiny little scratch on the toe box, but I got them for £130 instead of £200. So they're good value at full price, but with that extra discount, it's an absolute no-brainer. Something you might be asking yourself if you've watched my channel for any amount of time is, why did I bother getting these boots? You might have seen me talk about plenty of other boots that I've picked up over the past few years. The honest answer is that I've inadvertently become a bit of a boot collector as I get older, especially when I start digging in and researching higher quality boots. I'm still trying to buy things less frequently, but when I do, it's usually something of higher quality. My other justification is that the Doc Martens that I just sold were my daily boot, and so that's what these are going to become. Even though I have really nice things like my Andy Louise boots, I tend to reserve those for more special occasions when I can guarantee that they're not going to get wrecked. I also rarely buy things at full price. As you heard earlier, I got these at a deep discount, same as I did with my Andy boots and my Saint Laurent Wyatt boots. Thankfully, I'm patient enough to keep something in my wish list or set an alert on eBay and wait for the right price to come up. So I hope you've enjoyed me rambling on about my new Solovair Astronaut boots. I can guarantee you'll be seeing these in a lot of fit videos in the future because black military style boots go with almost anything. By the way, I'll leave links to these boots and anything else I'm wearing down in the description box below in case you want to try them out for yourself. But anyway, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra.